Hi, welcome to Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is going to be a real treat. We have a guest today, who you're already familiar with her work if you're familiar with Music for the Soul, because she makes us look good all the time. And I'd like to welcome to our podcast today, Kelsey Vredeveld. Welcome.
Hi, thank you both so much for having me. I'm excited to be live and on with you guys.
Yeah, that's
Well, we're excited to have you too, Kelsey. You and I have had some good conversations over the time that we've worked with you, and I just really enjoy you as a person, but also for your expertise in areas that Steve and I are not experts in. And you were such a godsend in the moment that we really needed you. So welcome, and looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure working with Music for the Soul so far, and I'm grateful that I have a chance to kind of share my expertise with your listeners.
Well, I was thinking about some of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. And one of the first things that came to mind, I used to write music for television. And as a result of that, I would go into a meeting with a television producer, and they would tell me what they heard for the theme song. I really think it needs to sound like this. And they'd give me all their perspective on what I needed to write. And I would go away and I would write exactly what they told me to write. I would take their coaching to heart to please the client. And I would come back and I would play them exactly what they asked for. And they'd say, no, that's not really what I had in mind. And so then I would go away and I would write what I thought it should be, which was completely different from what they asked for, bring it back in. And they go, yes, that's it. So I wondered what the equivalent is for somebody like you who's doing marketing and branding and design and trying to give people the look that speaks what they feel in their heart is their image of their company. How do you deal with those misfires, those times when what they're saying doesn't match what they mean?
Steve, you're hitting on my day-to-day experience working with clients. It's fantastic to have so many different perspectives. I work in multiple different industries with all kinds of different brands, small businesses, large businesses. The scope is quite wild, but that's always the struggle with being sort of on the creative side, doing the marketing and branding, having a specialization in that front, feeling like I'm equipped with the knowledge and experience and perspective that they might not share, that client. But at the end of the day, they are a client. And so it's probably so similar to what you experienced in TV, where I have my opinion, I have my professionalism, I have my expertise, but at the end of the day, it is their brand. And so I work the best with people who can see me for what value I bring, but then also have their own storied experience of their own brand to bring to the table as well. That collaboration is so necessary to create really great, robust marketing. And I've also worked with people who they have their vision and they don't care what my opinion is. And that's okay too. Again, it's their brand, it's their story, but I feel like being recognized in the space for what I can bring to the table is how the results are the best. Like you can see in the external results, whether it's social media posts or a logo design or just branding or copywriting, that final product is so much better when there's that level of collaboration versus those who just want their one-sided opinion. They know what they like. They couldn't care less what I think. And that's how they want to move forward. So, and it is, it's a little bit of ego that as a creative, you kind of have to get over and go, I disagree with you, but okay, it's your brand. I can only give you what I think you should do. And if you don't want to do it, then I'll use that font that is not going to read well, or I'll change that word that I don't think makes sense. But, you kind of just have to get over that. Yeah, that kind of ego and go, all right, okay, your opinion is what matters. It's your company and we'll move forward in that way.
So I just want to back up for just a second for our listeners that have no idea of what marketing entails. Could you define when you use the word brand, what does that mean?
That's an excellent question, and I probably can't, only because brand is such a wide scope. For me, when I say branding, it's totally whether you're a company, a nonprofit, a person who's out there in the world, you have, your brand and it's what kind of defines you. If you have a personal brand that exists where, it's the words, it's the emotive that people get when they're in your presence. So that can totally exist. When I talk about branding professionally, it's a lot of just what a company wants to say, and that's externally to their customers and to their competitors. Again, there's a whole scope that goes underneath that of their online presence, their look, their feel. But to sum it all up, it really is just kind of the emotive that's struck when someone thinks of that, again, person or company.
Right. So it can include things like what's going to make them recognizable and what they're known for.
Totally. And that's where I feel in my field, working with a lot of companies on marketing and branding, that's the one piece that maybe doesn't fully fit into their puzzle is they have this idea of who they are, but conveying that to the external world and those
Mm.
customers, it can be incredibly challenging, especially when you're so closely tied to it. If someone starts their own brand or company, that's their baby. That's who they believe in. That's who they want to see succeed. So at times it's important to get that external expert to come in and see what holes you're missing in your brand, what's not being conveyed to your audience. And that third person perspective can really add a layer to kind of round out who you are as a company and make sure you're sharing the right thoughts there.
Now, what I'm hearing is that you can be too close, like forest for the trees, and not see that you may be conveying something that you don't even mean to convey or that you didn't realize you were conveying.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
having that outside perspective is so important. Well, I
Absolutely.
have to ask, I know that when I was probably, gosh, 8 when I knew I loved songs. I mean, I knew early. I wonder, since this is creative, but it's also different, when did you first recognize or realize that you had an eye for the visual and that maybe design was something that you were good at or wanted to do?
It really was something in my childhood that I don't think I recognized, of course, at the time. I've always been a really silly, creative kid wanting to play house, make up songs, do a pretend cooking show. My brother and I had a fake talk show. We'd put on church services for my parents and do the
No wonder I
tithes.
like you.
Yeah. I was just that kind of kid, like always up to something. We had this talk show called What's the Big Idea? And even now, my brother and family and I reference it 20 years later. So, always very creative, knew that that kind of came naturally to me in terms of just ideas and thinking. And I remember specifically early in my college days, before I had defined a major, I was working with a t-shirt company as like a brand representative. I don't even think I was getting paid. I think they were just giving me free t-shirts to wear. And as a broke college person, I'm like, sure, I'd love a t-shirt. But we had to talk with their team about, what worked with their company, what didn't. And I just naturally in those kind of whiteboarding sessions would just rattle off ideas, come up with creative taglines. And people would always comment like, Kelsey, you're so witty. You have such a good thought process when it comes to like new ideas. And at the time, I had no idea that that was marketing. I thought I was just in a room of people and I was just talking like, let's come up with an alliteration about t-shirts that's going to like be marketable. So then years later, when I got further into college and started taking more defined courses, that's what always worked was like the communication marketing piece where I could just talk and rattle and my brain would go 1,000 miles a minute and things would just populate out of those conversations. So that was kind of where the love began. And that's my favorite thing to do out of all that I get to do, which is creative. And of course, the social media and the design piece. So much of it is just being able to go back and forth with a client and have these hour-long conversations where we're just kind of shooting the conversation and these crazy ideas come out of nothing. And I love when that happens because it's such a fired up moment to go, aha, this is the idea we were looking for. It just took us going back and forth and chit-chatting and stream of consciousness, no bad ideas. And you come up with this excellent something. And then it becomes this tangible asset and just a really cool process to be a part of.
You know how that's like songwriting? I've always said in co-writing meetings, you can't say a stupid thing.
Yeah.
Everything is safe because you may say something that's just off, completely random off the wall, and it won't wind up in the song, but it'll spark the idea that does wind up in the song. So
Mhm.
in creativity, that safe space, I think, is important across the board.
Yeah. And it's
I've
so great to go back to that and go, hey, remember when we said that silly thing? That's what sparked this now great idea.
Mhm.
So how fantastic that you can kind of link the two together.
Right, and I've always said that creativity breeds creativity, so when you get a group of creative people in a room and you have those creatives that are more logical based and then you have the artsy creative, I mean, there's different facets of creativity, but you all feed off of each other. And, like we were talking earlier about having kind of a fresh set of eyes
Mhm.
on things as far as branding goes, it's the same thing in songwriting. You have to be willing to, for lack of a better term, divorce yourself or adopt your child, or divorce your idea or adopt your child out, because there are babies like in songwriting, just like companies and things that you probably deal with a lot with different branding situations. You have to be willing to separate yourself from that baby and let someone else hold it for a while and see what their fresh eyes and fresh arms can do with that. And it's a little scary, but it's just like in this creative setting, when you're willing to not be married to an idea and you will let other people take it on a little bit, it can really become way more than you ever thought. And it's the same thing
Yes.
with co-writing. There's a lot of parallels here I'm hearing. So my question is, do you remember the first marketing job you ever did?
I don't know if I could say it was my first, but I certainly have a lot of experiences, yes, within the first few years, especially right after school, when I started to get into what marketing really was in the workplace. So, yes, I don't know that it was my first project, but certainly projects in the histories that I think, what was I thinking?
And do you look back and go, oh my goodness, that was
Yeah.
so fresh out of school?
Yeah, I remember I worked for a marketing agency straight out of college, which was a fantastic experience because anyone who's listening or knows what it's like to be a creative or a marketer knows that agency life is insanity. There's a million clients doing a million different things. So I worked in the copywriting sector of our agency and I had to write blog posts for like a shipping company, like truck shipping,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I would spend hours every day trying to learn about truckers. Like, I don't come from that background. I don't know anything about how logistically something gets from point A to point B. And I would just spend hours every day in my 40-hour week job getting paid to just research trucking and then write blogs about it.
I think
And
CB radios are involved, aren't they?
yeah, I learned about crock pot meals that you can take on the road. I learned about how logistics work. I learned about the hours I was down to such nitty gritty, how they get their mail when they're on the road from loved ones. So it was a great experience, but it's just funny because I just remember literally doing hours of research about trucking and then trying to turn it into a blog post every week. And I wish I could tell myself back then, like, first of all, talk to your boss and tell him that you shouldn't be writing these blog posts. You have no business talking about trucking. But then additionally, it's like just even learning how to like there was so much more I could have done to arm myself to be able to write those posts by getting to know the client better versus thinking, okay, I got to show that I can do this. I'm just going to Google
Mhm.
good meals on the road for a trucker. And like, that's not quality content. So just things like that stick out in my brain where I wish I could tell myself maybe work with a client, maybe learn how to have those conversations in person with the expert versus trying to pretend as a marketer, like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Because at 23, like, no, I had no business talking about trucking or the
Again with
industry
the
or any of that.
again with the parallels, because I'm always saying to young writers, if you're going to write about an issue, get yourself in the shoes of somebody who's lived that issue so that you can be authentic with what you're
Totally.
saying, because people are going to recognize that person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Mm.
You want to resonate with your listener or your designer or your consumer. You want to resonate with
Mhm.
them so they can go, oh, yeah. And so that idea of actually going to somebody who knows something about what you're supposed to write about, That's quality advice.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and I'm sure that it's so close to music for the soul because your topics are so specialized. They're so specific to that person. And so I can't imagine. It'd be like if you said, Kelsey, can you write a song about XYZ issue? And I would go, no. Who can I speak to that could help me versus, yeah, if I just try to do it myself and I have no connection to that, it maybe won't be as fruitful as someone who does.
well, Kayla, we are big believers here at Music for the Soul that Jesus wastes nothing. So if the whole marketing gig doesn't work out, you can always write a cookbook for truckers.
That's so true. I know. I'm waiting for the day that my child at some point becomes in the industry. I don't know. I
There
don't know
you
what's out
go.
there
I
for
mean,
me.
I would buy it if you would sign it.
It's not wasted information. We know that. We just have to wait and see how God's going to use it.
That's right. Never a waste. But so true. And I love that. Again, there's that humility to say, you know what? I don't know what it's like to live this life, but there are plenty of people that do. And I can reach out and try that on and try to come alongside as they explain to me and describe what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes, whether it's songwriting or how their company came to be. All those things. Again, the parallels are incredible. So tell me, like, okay, so I do this with songwriters all the time, but I want to do this with you, which is what would be like one thing you would tell someone that's like, I really like marketing, I like graphic design, all those things. I think this might be something that I want to do. If you have a couple pieces of advice, what would you say to them as far as pursuing a career in this area?
It's funny because I think marketing, branding, these kind of buzzwords where you asked earlier for the definition, they're so vast, there's not just one cookie cutter thing. So it's funny because I just feel like everyone thinks they know marketing, thinks they might understand it, but it really is a specialized skill. And it does take, not to toot my own horn, but it takes, a level of understanding of brands and design and what works, what doesn't,
I'll toot a
audience.
horn for you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wow. The mouth
That means
trumpet.
everything. Now I know what I'm talking about. If Steve validates it, then I'm talking about the truth.
You've got the
Um,
stamp.
yeah. It's so true though. So yeah, I think anyone that's interested in getting into the area, you don't necessarily even need a college degree. So much of it is just taking that step or that leap, even if you don't get a client or you don't want to start your own business doing it. You can take a brand that you love. Like if you love a certain kind of sparkling water, take that brand and just go, if it's design you want to explore, go on Canva or a free design site and redo the whole brand. Like just no mistakes, no one's judging you, just try it and start to learn that process. Or if it's, branding that you're into, like start to think through how you would change things. Or if it's marketing that you're into, take a company that you love and develop a campaign in your free time. It's that kind of trial and error that I think gets the best results and is kind of like that self-taught method. Of course, going to school and getting a degree and taking classes is a surefire way to learn everything about marketing. But if you don't have that ability or you feel like, you're too far past that point in your life, it's never too late to give yourself a shot at just learning it and just seeing if you have those ideas, seeing if they flow. In terms of design, I'm completely self-taught. I just learned Adobe InDesign one day and watched a lot of YouTube about how to do things. I never took a real course. I never learned exactly how, there's probably things I do that are the slowpoke way to do them simply because I figured it out on my own. But even that, it's just taking that step, trying it out. And I think if you feel like you have a love for it and a knack, then you just go for it.
It really is amazing how much we can pick up off the web, right? I mean, it's amazing. You can almost give yourself like a degree online with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that you mentioned Canva. It is such a fun tool for so many things. I use it for my kids' stuff and they have the free part of it. I just love what you recommended. That's awesome. And then so if somebody was doing it and they came up with some good designs, what do you do from there? Like you said you mentioned working for an agency
Mhm.
and then what was kind of your path then? So then are you independent? Are you
Yeah.
an
So I am independent. I work with my professional company and then I have a freelance business kind of on the side. And my full-time technical job, my first one, is a lot more strategy based. But that's why I began the freelance independent side, is that I really wanted to continue my pursuit of all the things we've been talking about: design, social media, marketing, even just these explorative conversations with brands, trying to give them ideas. That's been kind of this side hustle, for lack of a better term. But I love it. It's my favorite thing that I get to do, is just work with all different types of people in all different scopes of business. And that's what I really find my passion is really getting able to explore that kind of marketing branding side.
I think you said something really, really important in that answer, and that was an important word: hustle. I know a little bit about your story because you live in Colorado now, but you didn't grow up in Colorado. You lived in Michigan. And the courage that it takes to move to a new city where you don't know anybody and just put yourself out there is also part of the courage that it takes to take something that you are learning how to do and think you might be good at and put yourself out there. The risk that's involved. There's no success without trying and putting yourself out there and persevering. So tell your story about how you got from Michigan to Colorado.
Yeah. Well, give credit where credit is due. Totally a God thing. Nothing off my own credit, or if it wasn't my plan and purpose through him, there's no chance I would be out here. But I did feel a calling to move to Denver. I had never visited. I'd grown up skiing in the mountains, but never gone to Denver. But I thought, I just feel like I need to move there. And there's several places in my Bible that I love to look back on. I wish I couldn't tell you what they are right now, which is probably terrible. But in my Bible, I have certain verses that I've highlighted and said, am I going to Denver? Denver move? Just questioning, am I supposed to go to Colorado? And long story short, I felt this calling at the time. The company I was working for in Michigan, they had a company, an office in Denver. And I kept trying to move. I wanted to get to Denver. I felt called. I didn't know how to do it, financially mostly. And one day I was driving home from work and thought, I'm going to call the chief marketing officer in Denver at this company and say, my name's Kelsey. I want to move. I will scrub the floors, but I would love to work for you there. And I left a voicemail. She didn't call me back for, probably at least a month. And then one day she called me and said, I forgot I had your voicemail. A position opened up to be a director of marketing here. I was checking my voicemail, clearing it, heard your call again, and thought, I'll give this girl a shot. So they flew me out. I interviewed. And then within 2 weeks, I was literally packing up my apartment, putting it in a crate, and flying to Denver with no apartment, no car, no friends, no plan. But I started work on Monday. And so it was like 2 days where my mom and I, again, totally got, because he got me an apartment in a great area for a great rate. I got a car in 2 days, and my mom helped me move. And on Monday morning, I was in the office ready to go. So it was probably one of the toughest points of my life, and that trust barrier of feeling like, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. That was definitely that experience. And that has shaped me so much to bring it back to even just this freelance business where I don't know what I'm doing every day. I've sent quotes for projects that I probably shouldn't have. And I've done projects where I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know this software, whatever it is. But it's just that belief that I'm within God's plan and he's not going to let me fall so far that everything goes haywire. So I just keep moving forward, and he's granted me so many fantastic clients. He's granted me the experience, the joy of working with people like Steve. It's just crazy how he can work when you just kind of give it to him and go, I don't know what I'm doing, so I hope you do. And he always does.
I love that. And that's like that you had nothing but faith in a really big God.
Mm-hmm.
And when he just asks you to step out in that faith, look at that. I mean, you made a phone call. I'm sure after a month went by, you probably went, well, hey, you know what? I threw my hat in a ring and
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then she calls. And, we hear this all the time where it is just one small step of faith and following. And then there's not a formula to get to places. There's just your own individualized special map that he's already written for you. And I love that story. What an awesome testimony. And do you just sometimes sit back and go, "Oh my goodness, here I am, and Colorado is beautiful." But selfishly, I kind of wish you were still on the mitten because I think we would be fast and furious friends. But
That's very true.
but do you just sometimes sit back and go, "Wow, what if I'd never made the call? I mean,
Yeah.
how different life would be." But your obedience and your faith brought you to such cool places. It's so awesome.
Yeah. Well, and life is never short of a trial or something.
Mhm.
We all
Mhm.
have it
Sure, for
constantly.
sure.
There's something. But I think that's why it's so important to take note of the ways that
Mhm,
God has moved through you. Because
mhm.
when you're in the next trial, I can look back and say, but he got me through what I was experiencing then. Or
Yeah.
that move was so stressful, but he got me through. And in
Mhm,
2 days, I had everything laid out for me. And so
mhm.
now to reflect on that experience, that's what I find is that nugget of
Yeah.
hope. Like some
Mhm.
days it's so hard to get through your next trial and tribulation, but then
Mm.
you're reminded he has done good things. So he's going to
Mhm.
do them again. I just have to
Yes.
remember that.
You
Yes.
used the phrase suggested that there would be falls sometimes, but you also in that sentence said that you can't fall out of his care. I have a song called Farther Than Your Grace Can Reach.
Mm,
And that's what you reminded me of is
Mm.
just,
mm,
yes, we fall, but we can't fall out of God's care.
mhm,
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that story too. And
mhm.
you know what's so funny? Because I don't mean to diminish it in any way, but it's not terribly surprising.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is when you have a podcast like this and you talk to people and you ask them their story, Bex, how many times have we heard these stories and go, only God,
Yep,
only God? That just
exactly.
doesn't make any sense on paper.
Mhm.
There's no way.
No
And yet,
formula.
Yeah.
and yet, there is a way. And it's
Yes.
trusting God. So that's so
Mhm.
beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared that. Since there've already been so many parallels, I think I already know the answer to this, but I want to ask it anyway. One of the things that's so hard about being a songwriter or a musician in general is there's a lot of music in the world everywhere you go. And sometimes that can be really annoying to be riding in an elevator and go and thinking, listen to what they've done to that song. That's terrible. I feel like I can't just enjoy music a lot of the time anymore because I'm so discomforted by by a lot of the music that I do here. And I wonder, as a designer, will you be driving along minding your own business and see a billboard and think, oh, no, 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 that's not how you should have done that.
Absolutely. It happens almost constantly. And that's the one maybe negative of this kind of business is the judgment. Maybe you feel that
Mm.
similarly in
Mhm.
songwriting. I don't want to be a judgmental, cynical person. However, I will see something out there and go, what were they thinking? Or again, in a lot of the industries I work in, sometimes a client will say, give me a project and then I'll, give them a proposal. They decide not to work with me, but I see they clearly went to either someone else or tried it themselves. And so I see the end result without using my services, not to again
Mm.
tout my own brand, but I see their result and think, gosh, they really should have said yes to me. Like I really could have knocked that out of the park and they didn't. So yes, I see that quite often. It is just that fine line of I don't want to become a cynic and I don't want my ego to rule when I see
Mm.
other marketing campaigns or commercials or billboards or even social media posts sometimes that I'm like, that's what you went with, huh? Okay, fair enough. Wouldn't have done it that way, but that was your
Mm.
choice. So trying to ride that fine line of judgment.
Well, I wonder, since we've been talking about things you wouldn't do, are there just like some basic red flags, some no nos in design or branding or marketing that you would just say you should never fill in the blank?
That's a great question. There's so many. The one that I see happen a lot, which is why I love to work with brands specifically with social media, is it's a fickle beast, social media. There's so many sites that you can be on, you can't be on. I mean, there's just a lot to it. And I like to work with brands that want to build their social media, whether that's by followership or simply just having more of a marked presence on social. I see what happens a lot is someone internally who maybe again doesn't have that experience takes over their brand on social media and they choose to do a lot of crazy graphics and every post is so different and there's all different fonts and moving elements. I mean, there's so many things you can do now that it feels like the Wild West.
Mm.
When in actuality, it's so important to drive down who you are, try to get that message across, but it doesn't have to be necessarily flashy and innovative and the next meme. Everyone wants to be viral, and it just doesn't always work for the right brand. So that's kind of the red flag I see lately is, again, that presence to be on every platform, to have all different kinds of posts and graphics and utilize all the hottest technology in social media, when in actuality, it's so critical to, again, just really use it as a place for people to go and see what you sell, see what you have available. For Music for the Soul, it's been highlighting the resources available, the songs. And yes, of course, we want to do that in innovative ways. But my goal with Music for the Soul has always been to just keep it at our purpose. And that's, we have songs about issues that are important to people, and we want to give them a little hope, a little grace, and make them feel comforted. And that emotion's not going to be come across with these, again, flashy videos and posts and 11 different fonts and all different kinds of changing patterns. It's like keeping it simple for certain brands can be the right thing to do. It can just feel like it's wrong because there's so much out there.
Yeah, you definitely don't want it to become white noise, as they say. But you also, I think what I've learned from you is that recognizable, like if you look, just because it's really what I have to relate to. If you look at the Music for the Soul posts on social, it's immediately recognizable. Oh, yeah, that's Music for the Soul. I mean, because of the type of branding that you've done with Music for the Soul. And I think there's a comfort in familiarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to portray to people is like, hey, this is a safe space. We want you to be familiar with us because we want you to feel comfortable enough to let the guard down and let the music do what it's called to do and let the podcast do what we hope it's going to do and encourage you and bring healing and hope.
Becky, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because that is actually why I initially reached out to Kelsey, because I knew that was not what was happening.
Mm.
I was just, well, let's throw this at the wall. Well, let's throw that at the wall.
Let's see if it sticks.
and knowing full well, you know what, this is not my bailiwick, and I'm doing the best I can, but the best I can in this case is not helping the ministry. It might actually be hurting the ministry. And so, yes, to have that sense of, oh, that's Music for the Soul. How do I know that? Because that's how they look and that's what they do and that's who they are.
Steve,
So,
how many conversations have we had over the years about this social media thing? This is just not my wheelhouse. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I've lost hair for other reasons, but I'm sure that was a highly contributive factor.
I think I've witnessed a few times of you pulling it out when talking about social
absolutely.
media. Kelsey, we're so grateful for you.
Yeah. And obviously, we want to offer our listeners an opportunity to get in touch with Kelsey because you might have marketing or branding or design or social media needs of your own. So I have the email address here. It's kvredeve@gmail.com. kvredeve@gmail.com. Is there any particular invitation you'd like to give to people who might be needing a hand with this, Kelsey?
Well, I firstly apologize because we talk about branding and my brand email is gnarly. Even having you read it out loud like that, it's just, I really should probably change it to just like help, I need help at gmail.com or talk to me about my brand at gmail.com instead of this long-winded initials to last name. I digress. No, anyone who's listening, I, again, work across a multitude of industries, and my favorite thing to do over everything else is to talk to people about who they are, what they're doing, and the emotion they want their company to convey wherever that be. So I specialize in branding, marketing, and social media, work with a lot of clients on print stuff, digital stuff, again, just even exploratory conversations about what they should be doing. So if that's you, whether that's for a personal or company, don't hesitate to send me an email with any capacity of as simple as, hey, let's chat. Because again, I just really enjoy those conversations, and anything I can help with to support a different company or brand is what I love to do. So I'm open to it, and hopefully I'll get a chance to work with some of you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for the work you've done with us and for us. And you are a blessing in many ways. And I'm sure if you folks listening reach out to her, you will not only enjoy talking about your company and brand, but you will enjoy the conversation with her as well. I will testify to that. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I so appreciate it.
If you enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. We're going to go out today on a song called Whole in the Sight of God. Kelsey has been working on a new music video for us for this song. So just enjoy the song without visuals, and then when you get a chance, check out the music video. God bless. Thanks for listening.
Becky sits in the darkness, imagining the sky, finding her rainbows in the blessings of life. Without crayons, she colors the world with a smile, opening eyes by just being a child. She is whole in the sight of God. She is whole in the sight of God. She can see all things through the eyes of the Spirit. She is whole in the sight of God. Johnny sits in his wheelchair as the children run and play, feeling the warm summer sun upon his face. He moves everyone with his laughter and light, and through prayers they lift up for him every night. He is whole in the sight of God. He is whole in the sight of God. He can run to all things on the path of the Spirit. He is whole in the sight of God. None of us is perfect. Every life has a measure of trial. But Father, we know how much you love every single child. Katie lives deep in silence where music never plays, finding her songs in the joys of each new day. Without notes, she's creating a new symphony, 'cause her gentle, sweet soul is its own melody. She is whole in the sight of God, whole in the sight of God. She can hear all things through the words of the Spirit. She He is whole in His sight. We are whole in the sight